All right, welcome to Health Second Opinion. Dr. Chad here with you in discussion of surviving the law of cause and effect today. Because the law is always in effect, right? The law of cause and effect is ever present. And so one of the things that prompted this today is this acknowledgement of the EPA's, the state of Georgia and the state of Tennessee petitioned the EPA back in January for the emergency use of a chemical called Grignard Pure. It's an aerosol nanoparticle with its TEG. It's very similar to the PEG chemicals in the current vaccines that people are having reactions to. And this chemical is completely never been used and tested, and we've gained the state of Georgia, state of Tennessee had asked for this, and so now finding this information, I am going to be on the hunt to find out if this is being used here in Dade County and in Hamilton County in the air duct systems, because we must discuss things based on the law of cause and effect and surviving in this our society today to determine, science is here to use inductive reasoning to question things that we think are true and try to accumulate information, categorize information. And so science is ever necessary to look into and investigate. And that's one of the things that I would ask you right now. Has truth, and anyone speaking truth, ever tried to censor or silence someone else? It's only those people who are trying to propagate false conclusions or current science that for an end, because those were things that we hold truth. And if you look in throughout history, no one has ever really, the people who were speaking truth that we now understand with hindsight 2020, looking back, that those people were never the censoring variety. And so it begins to look at this thing that's about to be done with our children here in the state of Georgia and Tennessee, some of the most vulnerable in the population, the most precious in our population. And this is from the American Academy of, let's see here, American Academy of Asthma. Where's the statement? I apologize. Here, American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, the ACAAI, states, people with asthma and airway hyperreactivity, the irritant effect of short-term exposure to the water-based fog machines, particularly the glycol is used, could trigger acute asthma symptoms, including cough, wheeziness, tightness in breath. Even in people without asthma, the short-term exposure to the glycol-containing fog machines can be associated with headaches, dizziness, eye irritation. Prolonged exposure to the substance with asthma could trigger even more severe respiratory difficulty, could cause bronchitic symptoms, and even in those without asthma. Let's see here, while extended use or exposure has been associated with both short-term and long-term health problems. Confusingly, they have legalized this in the state of Tennessee under the EPA to be used in the break rooms and in the meal prep areas, even though the warning states repeated exposure and excessive aerosol exposures caused respiratory tract irritation and even death. But reports, no relevant information found pertaining to respiratory toxicity, because TEG toxicity studies have been focused on oral or dermal exposure rather than inhalation. So even the studies that are out there weren't done on inhalation. And why our state has asked to put this in our public areas, and is this being used in our school system here in Dade and Hamilton County is my question. Another study concluded in 2019 that done on rats, 2019 reported that rats exposed to the aerosol combination of the TEG particle in Grignard Pure and a disinfectant, but something chloride, apologize there, for 2 weeks exhibited severe respiratory symptoms as well as significant ulceration and degenerative necrosis of the nasal cavities. Mouse study in the same time frame showed non-specific indications of toxicity, including irritation, fluid imbalance, liver dysfunction, decreased body weight, along with unexplained mortality in female mice 2 to 3 days after exposure to the highest concentrations of the TEG. So my statement here is we're allowing in the state of Tennessee and in the state of Georgia, they have solicited the use of these in the public areas, even though on the warning labels it says do not use in potable water areas or food storage areas. But yet government healthcare food processing facilities are now able to use this also. And so this is the law of cause and effect. I would like to ask the question, because science is here for questions. Philosophy is here to answer questions. And so if we're going to survive today in the law of cause and effect, if we look at the past with antibiotic resistance and we look at the overuse of hand sanitizers and chemicals to put a chemical burden causing the death of bacteria, viruses, then those that get a potential dose die, or a fatal dose, sorry. Those that get a fatal dose die. Those that don't live. And therefore, those are the ones that then pass on the genetics to the next one, having learned from and changed to the cause of the death of the rest. So the effect is a bacteria or a virus that is resistant to this chemical. And we've seen throughout history when we've done this in ecology, there's never been, and I challenge you to find one, please, and bring it to my attention if you can. But in my research, there's never been one that has changed the ecology that didn't have long, widespread detrimental effects. And when we've done these things with chemicals in the past, we've seen that we have induced, through the law of cause and effect, mutant strains versus, things like MERS, methyl-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA, and we see that our hospitals are now challenged with controlling infections and treating infections. And we're running out of drugs due to our burden and overuse of chemicals in this wide, broad, sweeping way, instead of using them like they were intended for, which is a sharp instrument to attack in one specific case, or in very specific cases, so as not to induce the law of cause and effect and propagate the effect being that resistant to these chemicals. And so, especially in the areas of our children, to which we know we have no long-term studies on the effects that it will have. But the law of cause and effect states that if we do this, it will have a cause. It will be a cause. There will be effects. And since we can't measure those into future generations, and the school-age children are the least affected from this virus, should we not then heed caution? In my opinion, since it's my child, I would encourage caution. And so when we think about these things, the one thing in the law of cause and effect that will always stand the test of time and be true is that a healthier person is always a healthier person. And the more things that you do with the law of cause and effect, your body, forcing your body to change, you can induce this. And so my job as a chiropractor is to help people remove interference to the body's expression of life and allow them to influence their body's healing potential. And so when we look at our habits and we ask questions, which are, potentially deadly questions, potentially asthma-inducing, potentially, liver toxicity, cavity ulceration, we've got some real health potential questions here, is to ask the questions and then to ask you to continue to have that conversation and ask those questions of your fellow lawmakers and your fellow family members, and to have a question look at, are you doing things, and are we as a community doing things that is influencing the body in a positive, life-supporting, healthy regeneration way, or are we influencing things that build disease and dysfunction? Because ultimately, if we are putting chemicals into the air in our school systems or in public buildings or in lobbies and break areas and places where they're saying that this is possible, then it will be creating a toxicity issue. It might potentially kill the virus. It might. It says it has 98% effectiveness in the air when it's in contact. But in the area where the viruses land that it does not contact, then again, those that survive become resistant. So that 2% moves on to be the next layer that then has this survivability that we caused. That then there's new chemicals and it continues to get worse. But the one thing is that those of us that are coming in contact with these chemicals, they have negative effects. And toxicity is always disease producing. The toxicity itself is something that we try to remove. And in this philosophy of chiropractic, it's one of the biggest thoughts is that the removal of interference to the expression of life, because our innate intelligence, our soul, our God-given wisdom knows how to run our bodies, and it knows how to make the choices, and it's always doing something for the positive, and it's doing the best it can with the choices that it's given. And that's why the healthy lifestyle habits always make a difference, because the 700,000 roughly people who die every year from heart disease, or the 650,000 people who will die from cancer, and the 300,000 people who die every year from obesity, these people's lifestyles and their choices is what dominated their progression down those disease thresholds, to where then their body's innate matter, our physical, could not accommodate to that level of toxicity and or poor nutrition choices and all the lack of exercise and the subluxations and the things that complicated the body's ability to regenerate and restore tissue at a rate better than the death of the tissue, is really this law of cause and effect. And so what are you causing, and what are your effects? And really importantly is what are your doctors helping you contemplate and create thought? Because one of the greatest subluxations, one of the greatest interferences to the expression of life is a fear-based mindset. When you're only making your decisions out of fear, then we are commanded to remove fear from our lives. And when we are living and operating out of fear, then the rest of the body reacts chemically that then affects our emotions, that then affects our habits, that then affects our choices, and it communicates and operates out of fear, to which we know creates a sympathetic state in the human body, which we know that a sympathetic, hyper-driven fight or flight is sympathetic. Sympathetic-driven fight or flight state is a disease-causing state that health and regeneration and the formation of healthy tissue is done in the parasympathetic mode. And so simply mindset affects the way your body must change and respond to this chemical, physical, and emotional stressors, even though some of them are positive. And so when we think about these things, I want you to, like last night, one of the cool things that I did with my time last night after a very fun and busy day at the office was I did a shot with the doc. And well, some of you are like, what is shot with the doc? Shop with the Doc is a food label reading class, to which, for those that were at the workshop, that if you missed it, New Year, New You was a great workshop in which we empowered, and we're now on a 45-day challenge, to which I'm participating in right now in a fasting state where we're doing intermittent fasting on a 16-8 window, and then we're doing the advanced plan for the rest of the 5 days that we are doing the fasting. And then on the weekends, we utilize the core plan. And we're doing this as a group. And so I took the group that signed up for the challenge and went to Shop with the Doc, which is a walk through our wonderful Ingalls, and took them and taught them a food label reading class. And one of the things that was a big takeaway was that no one had ever heard of anyone even doing this that was there. They'd never heard of a doctor doing this for them, a shot with the doc. And I asked them, well, why do you think your chiropractor's the first one? And they kind of, I don't know. So well, the shot with the doc aligns with our principles, meaning that if I can help you remove nutritional interference from your life and you produce less toxicity with your nutrition by going through a food label reading class and understanding the code words and how they hide things and in the food, and you can remove that from your life, then your body will be less burdened from toxicity. It'll have less deficiencies, and your body will then be able to regenerate itself. So philosophically, chiropractic is designed to understand the relationship between our bodies, man, and our environment, and how to increase our survival potential, to remove that problem that is allowing you to not regenerate more than you are degenerating, right? So the idea is to keep that ratio of regeneration to degeneration in your favor for as long as humanly possible. And so we ask ourselves again, in this world of cause and effect, a law that is in action like gravity, whether you want it to or not, what are you influencing on a day-to-day basis with your mindset? And what's your doctor influencing in your life? And so one of the biggest things that I want to do for the population here in the tri-state area is to provide a place where they can actually get that kind of a doctor that is trying to help empower them with the knowledge of how to make choices, life choices, of how to deal with things. Give you a fun example. I had a great life eye-opening experience the other night. So it was, I got home I guess it was Monday. Monday, and wife's like, kids aren't really doing that well. Macklin's got a snotty nose, and Ellie, our newborn 8-month-old, is really starting to just be fussy and not well. And then, so go to work the next day, and so I'll come home on Tuesday, and it bad. Everybody's really not doing well. Runny noses and not talking. Our 3-year-old now, wasn't able to speak as well, and it was just really, you could tell they were on the verge of expressing a lot of symptoms and what a lot of people would call sick. And so a lot of people would have said, okay, their mindset would say, oh man, do we need to go get checked? Do they need antibiotics? Do they need some drugs? Do I check their temperature? Do I lower the temperature if they have one? And they would go down this mindset that is fear-based, chemical solution, outside-in thinking. But as a chiropractor and a person who promotes health instead of fights disease, I did what most of us would do, and that is, or chiropractors anyway, and that was we talked about what they'd been eating and how we were going to change it. We talked about more water, and then we got them adjusted. And literally, after their adjustments, things immediately started to change. And then we all went to bed early and did the next thing, which is get more rest, provide the body less demand and allow it to work on what it's dealing with by getting extra rest. And so in the morning, we woke up, no one's nose was running. No one was fussy. And life went back to what we would consider normal. And so I ask you, as I look in here, pardon me, I gotta make sure I know how much time we have. The law of cause and effect worked. There was interference to their expression of life from subluxation. And I don't even know if you have one. Do you know if your kids have subluxation? If you don't know, it could be choking off their body's ability, their nervous system, the brain-body connection, how our soul, our innate intelligence uses the brain-body connection to control and coordinate all other physical processes in life in the human body. If you don't know, the rest of the body could be in a state of dysfunction or disharmony, in which somebody might label a disorder or a disease, when in fact the body's just not healing as well as it could be if the nervous system was functioning at 100%. So by removing that interference and then removing interference nutritionally and providing them more water and more rest and coming from a mindset of improving health instead of treating disease, immediate response the next day, kids are better, no drugs, no nothing. And so a lot of people don't even know that exists. You might be questioning, like, wow, I didn't know that was the way to do that. And for a lot of people, that's really sad, because then the kids go down a chemical cascade of disease and learning that they think that it's a fact that health comes from a bottle or a drug. And that mindset is just an opinion. It's not a fact. It's like some of the things that we're dealing with today in government and policies and mandates and all these things that you're hearing about. These are opinions. They're science opinion today, to which we've seen in all previous history that most science has been wrong in its previous assumptions. And the science of the 50s, 1950s, is laughed at today. But yet decisions were made and policies were set and people were compromised. And so my question today is in the law of cause and effect, and in this world to which our children are possibly being exposed to chemicals called TEG, Green Guard Pure, an aerosol that is potentially causing asthma and irritation and bronchial problems and liver dysfunction, and we don't know yet. No one's got any, even the scientists that have studied it admit they haven't studied it as an aerosol. So we don't know what the causes are going to be. So why would we use it in a population that is the least affected by something anyway? It's not my job to make the policy. It's my job to help educate you, to ask your representatives the question so that you can have the type of health, your children's health, type of government, type of everything that we the people deserve the choice in what we put into our bodies. And so I ask you, if that makes sense, then to not be the boiled frog. We've all heard the study, or the story, I should say. You put a frog in a pot of water and you raise the temperature really slowly, the frog stays in the water. If you drop a frog in a hot pot of water, it jumps out. The past year of our lives has been a slow pot of water, rising in temperature, boiling the mindsets and the health paradigm of our American, wonderful, beautiful people. And I ask you these questions to provide thought so that maybe we can get some answers. And above all, not do things that we don't have the answers to and have no research to say that they're safe and are only being done in emergency situations. They're being licensed in emergency situations to which, especially in our schools, there is no emergency. I hope that this has been thought-provoking with love and respect. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you back here next week for Health, a Second Opinion.